Hi. Thank you for attending today's reading. Let's begin. My cat gave me the biggest heart attack I've ever experienced. So there I am, home alone, sitting in front of my PC and minding my own business. At some point, my cat came in, and I opened my bathroom's door. I got one in my room. For him, since he likes sleeping on the carpet there. Don't ask me where and why and how. But somehow I overlooked that my roof window, which I usually close because otherwise he'd attempt to climb trough it, was slightly opened. And that my toilet lid wasn't closed. Thinking that he was going to take a nap as always, I returned to my desk. But just moments later, loud scratching noises and water-like sounds started coming from the bathroom. I only realized after, 2 seconds, that this might be Flocky drowning in the toilet because he tried to jump up the window. So I literally threw my headphones off and rushed in there to help him. Just to find him trying to squeeze his ass off the goddamn narrow window opening like a fox, escaping a hellhound into its den. How this ended, you ask? Well, he's back in my room now. The window is shut tightly. And I'm sitting next to this stupid fur ball trying to process what had just happened. And what those water-like sounds were. Because my cat's fur wasn't wet at all. Cheers. End of story. Next story. Why I had to use a fake accent in front of my professor. So, to start, I'm a standard American girl. My natural American English accent isn't strong by any definition of the word. When I'm in the United States. This has been happening since August 2020. But I got the qualifications I needed to study abroad in England. And for the 3 subjects I'm studying in college, I have a total of 7 professors. Some days I'll have 3 of them and other days I only have 1. But one of my professors that teaches chemistry has a hard time understanding me when I speak. Apparently I say some words so wrong that he looks genuinely offended. So as the year has progressed, I've learned how to exaggerate a pidgin accent which is halfway between American English and British English. The British accent I reference is one from the general Manchester area, which also helps me remember how to say some words that would otherwise get me into trouble. I have been marked wrong on practice questions for spelling sulfur as sulfur, and I've been scolded for pronouncing aluminium as aluminum. An extra I is apparently mandatory. My other professors don't have a problem with my accent and let me pronounce things in whichever is easiest for me. But at this point, even they've all noticed that my accent is unintentionally changing. My fake accent with my chemistry professor is taking a toll on the way I actually speak, so I can't do my normal American accent anymore. It will probably go back to normal when I go home for the summer, but while I'm here, not even strangers ask me where I'm from anymore. I just sound like any other Manchester British woman, so they think they can determine where I'm from based purely on that. Which is funny because even though that has become my accent now, I don't actually study anywhere near Manchester. At the very least, I don't into trouble with my chemistry professor as much anymore, with the most recent one being last Thursday. First time I've been yelled at in nearly 3 months. And we were learning about EZ isomers. I pronounce it naturally as EEZ isomers, which is just how I read that in my mind. But apparently I'm supposed to say it is EEZ. Why that is I have no idea. But I'll know for future reference, I guess. It's also a little weird being one of only 2 American students in the entire college. Because even though 60 to 75% of the student body is made up of students from other countries, Iraq, Syria, Malaysia, China, Eritrea, Latvia, etc. For some reason, we're the ones who get the most press with our peers. Whenever something happens in the States with our politics or the gas pipeline shutting down, they come and ask us what's going on. We only know as much as they do, and these days, the few students in my college who don't know me as that American girl don't even believe me when I tell them that I'm from America because my accent is too Britified now. It's just crazy. And even though I've been here for 11 months, almost a year, they still bombard me with questions about daily life in America. It just makes me realize how dramatized everything is, because some of my classmates were under the impression that if you offended someone on the street, they would pull out a gun and shoot you dead. Needless to say, it took a lot of explaining to tell them that America isn't a complete anarchy or dictatorship, depending on how they were feeling that day. Even my chemistry professor asks me about gas prices, electricity bills, water bills, how far away from my high school I have to travel to get home. I can't answer half of the questions he asks me. I'm still a teen, so I don't pay my own bills. Most of them anyways. I'm also renting a room from a family friend who has a similar problem with my American accent as my professor, but he doesn't yell at me for it. Thankfully, I'm sharing a house with him, but he just teased me for it. Mockery. Really. I have come to learn that British people tend to think that all Americans are loud, obnoxious. Boys act like playboys and/or surfer dudes. And girls like reproachable TikTok girls who show off everything to the point where they're stretching the legality of their attire. And then they met me. Stark opposite to everything they were expecting. They also expected me to get offended really easily. This applied to all of my professors as well when we first met. So they tried everything possible to avoid saying anything negative about the US. It's crazy how much we're stereotyped by everyone else in the world. Even my peers who were from other countries agreed with the British outlook on America. I had to directly specify that I don't get offended and they're allowed to trash talk the US if they really wanted to. Hoo boy. They've been taking advantage of that liberty. It seems like every time I walk into any of my classes, one of them makes some derogatory comment about something crazy that happened in the US. Something that I hadn't even heard about. And then suddenly I'm compared to crazy New Yorkers or Florida man or some idiot from Texas. I honestly don't mind the teasing or the mockery. But I do mind getting into trouble because of it. My chemistry professor is the only one who gets onto me about my American upbringing on some days. So I got him back. One thing that I definitely prefer in the UK over the US is the liberties that students can take with their professors. We're allowed to meet up with them outside of school hours. In public. Not in private, obviously. And my chemistry professor actually tried to deliberately hide this from me. But students are allowed to prank their professors. Greater than. Imagine the ideas that came to mind when I heard that. I was tempted to lock him out of the chem lab, stick silly signs on his back, put vinegar in his water bottle, block of solid potassium in the sink. The list of possible pranks just went up, but I didn't want to get a disciplinary referral and I didn't want to go to jail, so I came up with a completely harmless prank. For a little context before I say it, he has a passionate hatred for both biology and psychology, saying that they're not real sciences and that they are to never be mentioned during class hours. Yeah. The prank ideas went wild since we are constantly reminded of this. To start, I bought and carefully wrapped a £5 book called A Short Introduction to Psychology as well as a potted succulent plant with an added note that I personally wrote, saying, "This psychologist said that caring for something is good for your mental health." Quote, "Needless to say, I expected to get yelled at during class the next day. Apparently not. I don't know what he did with the book, but he kept the plant in the lab. Poor thing had its leaves drooping within 2 weeks, so I called him out on it, asking if he had watered it. He said, yes, and when I pointed out that it was dying, he just stared at it intently, saying completely dryly, 'It's alive, isn't it?' Quote, I started laughing, which made him start laughing. And then he spoke again. Not a direct quote this time, but something along these lines. I have been caring for this irritating thing, but it refuses to grow, so I don't see how it's making my mental health better." He read the note. XD. That was the most enjoyable time I have had in his class that wasn't related to schoolwork or his other banter. But we have a bit of a love-hate relationship. Some days he is my favorite teacher and other days he annoys me just as much as the plant does to him. I've changed because of this man. But I don't hate the changes that I've seen in myself. My mom thinks that British accents sound more elegant and refined, so I'm hoping she'll like the accent change. I have great relationships with all of my other professors and I've met up with some of them too. Chat casually on their lunch breaks off campus. It's just a great experience all around, and despite the love-hate relationship that I have with my chem professor, I don't get the feeling that he actually hates me. Maybe I have more in common with that plant than I realize. We both annoy him to no end. That's for sure. Though I don't intentionally try to. I changed my accent because of him, and even though I don't think it was necessary, he appreciates it. So I'm happy with such a subtle change. End of story. That is all for today. If you want to support my automated channel, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. See you tomorrow.